Welcome to another episode of In the Field. Today I'm Dylan. Well, hold on a second. Welcome to another episode of In the Field. I'm your host Dylan, and with me today is the doctor himself, Baron von Homesch, JT, the national champion, Canadian national champion. How are you doing today, JT?
Good, yourself.
I'm excellent. Excited to see what we have in front of us. We've got two strong players going at it, with Isaac on the left playing the Agent Joe team, and then on the right side is going to be Shadowmeld playing Parallax Power. Now, Parallax being a newer card from the set, this is a real treat, so we can get to see it in action. He's also got Fatality, so for those of you who are about to get the new War of Light set, this will be a real treat just so you can see how they work in action. Now, what are your initial thoughts, JT, on these teams?
Well, I'll tell you what, they're both direct damage teams. You're looking at Jocasta dealing her damage with an ability, and really the same on Parallax Power through Fatality, Pyro, and Vibe. So it'll be interesting to see how this works. Definitely got two direct damage teams firing at each other. A couple of those characters are new, and there's some interesting globals on the board. So a lot of bolts. A lot of bolts, a lot of bolts. We'll see what happens.
Definitely, definitely. And like I said, Parallax, just to let everybody know, this global, in case you haven't seen it, use an energy, reroll any number of dice before your attack step. So that's definitely we're gonna see a lot of that, I'm assuming, just to make sure that these teams get exactly what they need. All right, so let's go ahead and get this game underway. Looks like Isaac won the roll-off. So Isaac, if you want to go ahead. So again, just looking at... Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, Isaac's primary goal has got to be get Jocasta out and start churning that direct damage. Now, it's interesting. He's got a character that I think will do him no good this game, and that'll be the Shield Agents. And Constantine may provide some help for him with some of the big hitters that Patrick brought, so we'll see. And there it is. That's Jocasta first buy. That's probably exactly what I would have done in that situation, is get her fast, and start working towards that direct damage.
Right, yeah, Jocasta being the super rare again, whose ability says the first time each turn Jocasta would be dealt damage. Instead, deal that damage to your opponent in a way basically bouncing that damage directly into their face. And then Mr. Sinister Global says pay double bolt. Each player chooses one of his characters to take 3 damage. So not only is that player taking damage, but they are also possibly removing a character if they have low enough defense. Now for this first roll for Shadow, we're seeing 3 masks and a bolt. We're not looking at any kind of ramp really other than Blue Eyes on these teams. So the pacing is really, I think, going to be determined by those character face rolls that we should see in a couple turns here. But with Patrick's team or Shadow's team, what do you think is the initial direction he's going to have to head? He did buy a Vibe, but from there, where do you think he's going to go?
Well, so with the Pyro Global, the more bolt characters that he has, the more direct damage he can do. So he can draw those dice and roll for bolts. He can use Parallax Global to just keep continually re-rolling until he gets the rolls that he's looking for. Vibe's ability is when you roll a double bolt and do not re-roll it, then he deals damage to everything except you, even your own characters and the opponent. So he deals 1 damage for every double bolt you roll and don't re-roll. So given the ability to pull dice and roll them at will with Pyro's Global, and to re-roll dice with Parallax's Global, it's really interesting and pretty powerful.
Well, it looks like he's going for another Jocasta. He went ahead, Isaac went ahead and blue-eyed his sidekick in order to pay the additional 2 energy to purchase Jocasta. So it does seem like he is fully committing to that strategy, at least for these first few turns. He does gain a little bit of ramp there with Blue Eyes prepping a die. And we are probably going to see a very similar action on the right side from Shadow. fielding sidekick. Actually, he's just going to buy Fatality. Now, what are your thoughts on Fatality being new to the set here?
Well, combined with Iron's Global of changing your sidekick characters to bolts for the cost of just one bolt, that is super powerful. Direct damage. It's going to be tough to beat. I think in set or out of set. There's only so many answers to direct damage. Some of them are really good. Some of them are just kind of good. I am a little bit curious as to why he didn't spend one of those question marks to Blue Eyes the sidekick. Maybe he wanted a blocker. I'm not sure, but he could have Blue Eyes the sidekick to get a little bit of ramp. Either way, I think Fatality is a good buy.
Definitely, definitely. And again, the bonus here may be the blocking that the sidekick will provide, at least, giving him a little more deterrent if he does throw a Jocasta at him. So we're looking at 3 energy, 2 wilds, and a bolt with 2 sidekicks fielded for Isaac. With this turn, I mean, do you think you go after the Lord of D combo to try and redirect any kind of damage towards Lord of D, or where would you go?
Well, so Lord of D is really to remove targeted damage, and there's not a whole lot on Patrick's team that will target Isaac's characters. He may go Grundy just to get a form of removal. We'll see what he does here, but I think I would probably go that direction. There it is.
Looks like it. Yeah, we've got a Grundy. Again, this Grundy being the removal card that came to be popular after the world champion Dean utilized it with Blue Eyes. So when Solomon Grundy is KO'd, other than by damage, so outside of taking direct damage from an attacker or blocker, you can KO an opposing character. We are seeing on Shadow's turn a bolt or a vibe possibly being rolled. He does have 5 energy, and he's just going to spend it, it looks like.
Pyro. Yeah, so Pyro, I really like this Pyro because if you get your used pile filled up, what you're able to do is attack with him, roll everything in your used pile, and deal direct damage for the bolts that you roll. And with the Pyro Global, he's able to control a little bit what's in his used pile and what's not. So it's a fabulous ability, and Patrick really knows how to use it well. So as the walls begin to build a little bit and characters are in the bag, it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward.
Right, we are looking at a level, I believe that's level 3 Jocasta. Again, this character bouncing damage. He does have a perfect opportunity to go ahead and Mr. Sinister Global as well. Now, would you do that on your turn normally, or when would you use that? When's the most opportune time to use that global?
Every time is the most opportune time to use it. So he may elect to wait and not give Patrick the ramp of the sidekick. I think in this case I would probably do that because some of Patrick's characters cost a little bit more to field. Fatality is the only one that he's got in his bag right now, so the ramp probably isn't as big of a factor. But if I knew he had Pyro and or Vibe coming, I wouldn't want him to have the opportunity to draw an extra die, simply because I know that that energy is precious, especially in fielding those characters.
It does look like we're going to possibly see a Fatality on this turn. Now, her ability does exclude the wild energy side, so potentially, though, he can utilize the Iceman Global to turn those still into bolts to activate her ability, dealing 3 damage. Now, it's just a one-fielded effect, so once he's fielded her and had the bolts in his reserve pool, he then can spend them, because during the main phase you can order of operation any way you like, basically.
The thing he probably has to worry about, though, is she's a TFC of 2, so if he has to pay 1 to field her, that could create some issues. And so I look for him to, so he's not going to be able to use her ability. Even if he turns all those to bolts, he'll still have to pay 1 to field her. So that ramp in that case didn't hurt Isaac. But boy, you got to watch that the fielding costs and having resource management in a game without a whole lot of ramp is really a significant thing.
Now, on this turn, would you go ahead and zap the Jocasta and then attack, or would you not even attack, or what's the best move, I guess, for both players here?
Well, I wouldn't zap the Jocasta. I'm not sure exactly what he's gonna do, but he could turn the mask and the sidekick into bolts, and then start using Pyro's Global. And if he were actually, he maybe should have done that prior to fielding Fatality, because he could have drawn and gotten the energy necessary.
Right.
So that's interesting, and Isaac bolting off the sidekick is also interesting. Maybe he wants to ensure that when he uses the Mr. Sinister Global, he is able to simply ping Fatality an additional time and force her off the field. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, and with this roll, he did have to choose one or the other, essentially, if he wanted to activate Jocasta, just because both characters having a 1 fielding cost. He'd be stuck if he did end up keeping both character sides. With the Jocastas out like that, that's a tough roll. Who would you pick in this situation, JT?
Grundy. I would pick Grundy. In fact, I would have rerolled the Jocasta and try to get some bolts. Having one in the field is great, but she's level 3, and so you don't really need the second one. I don't know. It's probably 6 of one, half a dozen the other this early in the game.
Right.
But
and I think
had he gotten lucky, it would have been another.
I think it'd be a completely different game, though, if we were looking at a Professor X in this game with the amount of energy that they would have potentially available. Fielding a second Jocasta, being able to activate that Mr. Sinister Global twice, but with the speed that these two teams have now, with only relying on Blue Eyes essentially for that ramp, the pacing definitely, like you said, in this moment, Solomon Grundy is the best choice to make sure he gets that anything he wants basically off the field on his own terms. So the roll there we're looking at is going to be 5 energy, 1 bolt. He's going to go ahead and spend the 5 to buy an additional Pyro, saving a mask. Where would you go again from this place? Like we should see there's 6 dice left in the bag. They should pretty much all be, looks like, sidekicks. Would you attack at this point, or just hold out in terms of game state?
Well, first off, I'd roll for all the bolts I could get, and I would probably attack simply to force Patrick into using distraction. If you can squeeze another 5 damage in on top of, potentially another 3, that's 8 damage. That's pretty significant in terms of the game state. That's basically half of what Patrick has left. Now he will use, I'm sure, the mask to distract, but
he's going to go ahead and start with a Nasty Boy Global, so dealing the 3 damage directly to him. So potentially 8 damage for the turn if Patrick decides not to distract. I agree. I think that's at least to put the pressure on him at this point in the game probably is the best thing he can do.
Yeah. Now I might have used the Iceman Global on the shield and the sidekick just to ensure that I could sneak another 1 damage in the next turn using Magic Missile to ping Jocasta at least once, especially with no ramp. If there were Professor X in this game or something and there were lots and lots of sidekicks, that would be one thing. Maybe you want to save that bolt instead of pinging Jocasta to Blue Eyes Grundy. Either way, having a bolt in the reserve instead of a shield is really useful.
Right, yeah. Right now the only shield globals we're looking at are Mystic Box, which is pay a shield swap and attack value with one of your monsters with that of an opposing monster. That looks like that is the only shield active global, but We also have to remember Parallax is always an option in this game. I know we haven't seen it yet, but it definitely is probably we'll probably get some use out of it before the game's over.
Oh, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. So he attacked with both, and Patrick distracted Grundy back, which I think is the right move for Patrick. Get that Jocasta over in the used pile, so that damage, direct damage chain is kind of broken right now. But again, it's already 11 to 20. Certainly, the Jocasta team appears faster in this case. For the time being.
That's right, yeah, and again, it just comes down to the rolls. He could potentially wall up, but in terms of a counter to Jocasta, does he really have an answer to that?
No, I mean not really. There's no real removal on Patrick's team, so it'll be interesting to see what he does here. He might have thought about trying to use Parallax Global to re-roll that vibe again. Part of the problem with vibe is that if he goes off, then he damages Jocasta, and you're going to take damage anyway. And it's just an interesting matchup with no removal on Patrick's side.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think, like you said, it comes down to speed. And at this point, it looks like Jocasta has a little bit of a lead on him. Now, we don't have her in the field. He did go ahead and just pull an additional 4 sidekicks out of his bag. So this potentially would give Shadow the opportunity to come back next turn. Would you go ahead and Pyro Global? Do you think at this point would that be beneficial enough for you as on Patrick's side?
I think that's probably why he saved all that energy. He guarantees the ability to Pyro Global twice, which will refill his bag. And he's very likely going to be able to filter his bag to get more or less mostly just what he wants, which I think is going to be a really beneficial thing, especially given being behind and needing to do a little bit of catching up.
Yeah, and as Shadow's talked about it in the past, I know on the cast, the Pyro Global, pay double bolt, draw, and roll 2 dice from your bag. Keep any bolt results. Return the rest to your bag. So can you kind of break that down? Just give us a quick summation on like the benefits of that global there.
Yeah. So if he's drawing characters or sidekicks, every character he's bought so far is a bolt character. So it'll either go back to his bag or roll more fuel for the Pyro Global. And since he'll be doing it on Isaac's turn, all the energy he spends goes directly to the used pile. So as he spends that energy, it goes to the used pile. If he's able to cycle his bag and pull some sidekicks out and pull those other characters in, it'll be beneficial. So we'll see exactly how it ends up working out, but I think that's definitely his plan.
Isaac went ahead and purchased a Constantine Super Rare. While Constantine is active before your opponent clear and draw step, you may name a character. If that character is fielded this turn, ignore its text until the end of turn, and it cannot attack this turn. So that's definitely going to be helpful if we do see some attacks, or attempted attacks, I guess, on Shadow's side. But in terms of when fielded effects, that does shut down Fatality. And I guess that's pretty much it in Pepper. So that shouldn't be too harsh since he hasn't really invested too much into it. So it does look like he went ahead and did do the Pyro Global. He did pull a bolt with a Pyro die itself, which he's going to go ahead and Iceman Global, turning those 3 sidekick dice into bolts, continuing that cycle to feed the Pyro Global in order to try, like you were saying, JT, to clear his bag out a little bit more. So.
Yep, and so with those 3 bolts, he can trigger again. I probably would have used the Iceman Global first and just spun down the Vibe die, because now he's in a situation where he's got 2 characters pulled out of his bag. and really, I'm not sure that benefited him as much as he had hoped.
Right. Yeah, that is essentially a roll of the die kind of luck situation, pulling the bags and only getting that one roll on those die. Um, we did see that he's going to go ahead and bolt the sidekick there. Um, what's the logic on that? You think that clearing that off the board?
Just a little. Well, actually, I'm not sure what Patrick wanted to do that for. If I'm Isaac, I probably would have done it just to get a little bit of ramp. So
Right. Right.
I don't know what Patrick's thinking there. I mean, it's Patrick. He's definitely got a plan. Um, but
Nefarious geneticist does have some kind of intention behind every move, I'm sure. So we're going to look at an attack from Isaac of 5, bringing Shadow down to 6. So it is a tight game right now. It does look like the tides have turned quite a bit in Isaac's favor. But we are going to see some characters potentially this turn. Pyro and Fatality have been pulled out of the bag, both being rolled. Her ability will not be effective on this turn unless he does decide to re-roll the sidekick and Pyro. But since it's probably more beneficial just to get the characters out.
yeah, I think you're probably right. It'll be interesting to see what he chooses to do because he could go a lot of different directions here. But I think because of what he has in his use pile right now, it's probably just as beneficial to get both characters out and use Pyro's ability as it would be to try and get any direct damage through with Fatality.
Now there is opportunity though during the main phase for Isaac to utilize Magic Missile. Magic Missile's global, paying a bolt to deal 1 damage to target character. But it does look like he went ahead and re-rolled. Perfect. That worked out perfectly for Patrick. So he's going to deal 3 damage directly to Isaac, utilizing Fatality's when fielded effect. So that's a good start at least. First blood from Isaac. So.
Yeah, and the other option that Isaac had is the Mr. Sinister Global. So
Right.
Patrick probably would have chosen Fatality at that point, but there are a couple options on the board to deal damage to a character. It'll be interesting to see. I would not be surprised at all to see Patrick again use the Pyro Global on Isaac's turn.
So it looks like he did not decide to use the Mr. Sinister Global, leaving Fatality on the field. Now, she is a when-fielded effect, so I can see the upside to not removing her. But at this point, since you're so ahead in the game, would you have chosen to remove her, or how would you have played that?
I probably would have played it just as he did.
Okay.
He knew he was going to draw at least one Jocasta. I would expect him to re-roll exactly what he's got there in the reserve pool.
Perfect.
And it really could not have worked out much better for him. The only thing that would have been better is a double bolt, but at this point he's got him on 2 turns. So Patrick's going to have a lot of work to do to catch up.
Right, definitely. So those 4 bolts he has in his reserve pool currently on Shadow's side. What do you think the intent is behind those? How is he going to utilize those?
I think he's got to go Pyro Globe. Well, I take that back. If Isaac passes in priority, he'll have to use Magic Missile to ping her. But if he doesn't, then I think he'll go Pyro Global and try and reset his bag a little bit. If he can get those 3 dice out and get the 5 that are in the used pile in his bag, then he knows that he's got a pretty good chance of drawing Vibe and Pyro and getting those characters out. And being able to swing is potentially important. So.
Right, and what we're looking at here again is as soon as Jocasta takes damage, that initial damage, she does redirect it, but after that she will take direct damage. So if Isaac does decide to utilize the Mr. Sinister Global, that does leave his Jocasta potentially open to Magic Missile Strike. So we'll see. Again, we'll see what plays out here, what he decides to do. So he did have to pay the bolt to field Jocasta. Um,
I would expect him to use the Mr. Sinister Global, and that'll knock out Fatality. But he's got enough of a lead that I don't think her coming back and her ability triggering on the next turn for Patrick is really going to do that much for him. So I do expect, there it is, that's the Mr. Sinister Global. Patrick will take 3 more and go down to 3. Boy, that door is just closing fast for him. We'll see what he does with his energy.
So it looks like he's going to spend the bolts to try and take down the Jocasta. He does have enough, and he does. He's going to go ahead and KO Jocasta, dealing 4 damage directly using Magic Missile. On his next turn, he will see another Fatality plus an additional 4 die, which is going to be refilling his dice or his bag, since he only has 3 dice in his bag. And I'd like to just give a shout out to Ron, the designer of this new format for us. Something that you can see with the new update will be what's the status of your bag. I know that's been something the community's been asking for a while, and he's done a great job with that. We're looking again at another character Fatality side. This is the level. That was the level 3 side. Now it's a level 1 side. Definitely a good choice, re-rolling. So he potentially could have dealt that damage. He's going to go ahead and utilize the Iceman Global, perfect, and deal that 3 damage.
Yep, hard to beat that. He gets to save those bolts. Maybe he'll trigger Pyro. Maybe he'll get a chance to Magic Missile Jocasta if Isaac misses on bolts for Mr. Sinister. So again, the door is open just a wee little bit, but I think this turn was probably gonna seal the deal.
Yeah, this definitely has been a valiant effort on Shadow's side to try and come back from the initial strikes of those Jocasta, but I think that definitely has been paying dividends, those early purchases, even though he did lose a little bit of ramp opportunity if he had, maybe blue eyes something, but the Jocastas themselves are such a strong card, and I think really are a testament to their value in the meta for sure. There are, I know, plenty of counters to it, and unfortunately Patrick didn't have one in this game, but it does look like he's going to be able to field the Jocasta with 2 energy to spare. Not enough to do Sinister Global at this point.
Yeah, so I think the right move for Isaac is definitely to ping Jocasta after he gets her fielded.
Yeah.
I don't know that it benefits him to spend that energy on buying anything. He can still save the mask for distraction on the next turn. If he saves them both, I won't be surprised, and I certainly won't accost him for it. I think there's a valid strategy. He could wait till the next turn to ping her, force Patrick to use his bolts to ping her. We'll see.
So it looks like Patrick went ahead and ended his turn, foregoing the direct damage on Jocasta. He is going to roll a Pyro, so that potentially can give him some extra damage opportunity. And almost the 3 bolts there, but again, that only happens when she is fielded. So that's a good turn in order to build up a wall at least. But at this point, being at 3 life, I mean, there's maybe a couple ways he can get around it. Potentially, no. I mean, he can't nasty boy. That would kill him directly. What would you do in this situation, JT? I know he's really up against the wire. What's the... All right, we're going to see Parallax.
We're going to see Parallax.
So Parallax is global, allowing to re-roll the die, any number of die before your attack step. Since Fatality was already on the field. When it is rolled, it remains on the field. So he is going to go ahead and spend the additional 2 energy to purchase or 3 energy to purchase a Human Torch.
Yeah, now this Human Torch is one that probably doesn't see a lot of play, but it's the one where each time you field a character, you can roll a Human Torch die from your used pile, and if you roll a character side, it goes to your reserve pool. So it's a way to bring bodies in and wall up fairly quickly. I think Patrick just was looking to spend energy. I think he's pretty well aware that the Human Torch is probably not going to help him in this game.
Right. So
wait, it might, because here's Pyro's ability. So he will roll everything and deal 3 direct damage from Pyro's ability straight to Isaac. So there was a point to buying that die, and I have to be corrected in that. Isaac went ahead and distracted Pyro, but he's going to take the 3 direct damage, and he's going to block Fatality with Jocasta. So good move there by Patrick buying that Human Torch. There's definitely a point behind that, and it worked out for him a little bit.
Definitely. So we're looking possibly at the final turn here. It's just going to come down to either 2 bolts or just attacking directly into Shadow's line of defense there. And he did roll a Jocasta and 2 bolts, so that should be game. Yep, it looks like we're going to call that game, dealing directly the 3 damage to Jocasta, putting Shadow under by 1. So good game by both of our let's go ahead and get them into the chat. We'll bring in our winner first. Patrick, how are you? Well, actually, sorry, that's messed up. Hold on a second. We'll get our winner in here first. Isaac, how are you feeling about that game?
Isaac's still muted.
Yeah, I know, I'm waiting.
But he might not know.
The magic of movie editing, I guess.
He said his computer just crashed.
Ah, okay. Well, let's start with you then.
All right.
So, Patrick, how are you feeling about that game? I know that was a tough matchup there, not having a real strong way to remove those Jocastas. What do you feel was the turning point in that game?
The turn he held back 2 bolts to KO my Pyro before he could attack, when I had a used pile full of lovely bolt characters.
Right.
I was already behind early, and I don't know, I just wasn't hitting it, and I probably should have Parallax Globaled a lot more often that game, but I was hoping characters would come up, other than Fatality.
Now, is there any positions on your team right now that you would probably reassess, just based off this game? Is there maybe a spot you felt that you could have utilized a little differently?
No, I sometimes wish I had a Human Paladin on my team, but then I remember, no, I don't. But it's rough playing an aggro team that is trying to aggro into a Jocasta, and I thought I had a good plan for it. It just didn't happen.
It's interesting that the Jocasta team is actually an aggro direct damage team, right?
Yeah.
There are counters that you want against aggro, and there's counters that you want against direct damage, and usually they're not exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Jocasta can swing at you, but it's not about blocking or unblocking. It's about not taking the direct damage when you do block, or not letting her, like, his Mystic Box is actually a really solid tool with Jocasta, because then his Jocasta's hitting you one way or the other for however much damage your characters deal, right? Because if you block, he's bouncing into your face anyway, and if you don't block, then he just steals it and hits you in the face with it.
Well, and he rolled level 3 so often that even if you had had a sidekick to block with, he'll swap it and you'll take 3 anyway.
Right.
So.
And and the Nasty Boy Jocasta combo is just so good. Such reliable damage. And had I known I was going to play Jocasta, I probably would have taken Iceman off my team, because it just makes her so much easier to play. Because you can Iceman and get the bolts you need to guarantee you're doing at least 3 every time your turn comes up.
Definitely. So thank you so much. Again, it was a great matchup between you two. Let's go ahead and get with our winner, Isaac. Isaac, congratulations on the win. How are you feeling?
Good, thank you. It was definitely a bolt-heavy game.
Yeah, definitely from both sides. It was coming at you with the energy, the bolt energy. Do you feel like there was a real turning point in that game where you felt like you had it kind of locked up?
I think there was the point where I had both Joe and Solomon on the field and was able to swing with, I think, 8 at that point. I felt like that kind of was my pressure point as far as getting some good damage in at that spot. And, I mean, I was getting the bolts when I needed them. I mean, my sidekicks were coming up just how I needed them to hit Joe for the Sinister. And like Patrick just said, I mean, Joe and Sinister are the combo. I mean, they're the team. They work together so well.
Now, Isaac, I know you have this constructed for an event, but is there anything on the team that you would change, or after playing this other bolt direct damage team, do you have any ideas of ways you might alter your team?
So I have this constructed because I was playing a guy in Vassal last night and kept getting it handed to me, and so I made this to face his team. I don't know if you know who that was, JT.
I might.
So that was kind of the reason that Shield Agents is on here. I mean, Shield Agents gives me the cheap double bolt. I just didn't feel like I needed to go that route. Initially, I kind of thought first turn I should have grabbed the Constantine, but the first 2 turns worked so well to get 2 Joes and get 1 sidekick prepped that it was hard to pass up on that, and then get the Grundy the 3rd turn. I didn't need Grundy, but I mean, he was definitely a necessity on the team. Probably the only thing I would look at is, okay, Lord of D-Ring, there was nothing on Patrick's team that made me think I needed to field that, so I didn't even go after it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, was about that in terms of assessing the viability of that on this team. I know there's some other options in terms of can't be targeted by globals and action abilities. Would you consider possibly changing those spots around, or do you still think that they're strong enough in the meta that you're playing that they should remain where they are?
It's tough. Like, so Lord D-Ring is still, I mean, one of my favorite pairs, but lately with our constructed events, I've been running Human Paladin and Captain America. You know, if you're going to paper cut me, or if you're going to try and hit me with a bunch, I've got counters for both. Lord D-Ring was more going after, okay, I got stuff flying at me from all sides. How can I calm that down? How can I make sure that doesn't happen as often? And so I kind of went back to, well, maybe I'll try this pair again and see how well it pairs up with a Jocasta or somebody that, you know, I don't want Joe to get pinged. I want her out there, and I want to prevent the magic missile damage. I want to prevent anything that's going to try and, you know, affect her from my opponent's side. So it's a great way, I think, to keep Joe from getting hit by the little one shots.
Well,
Go ahead.
No.
I was just going to mention that the games we were playing last night it was a combo heavy team, so a lot of globals, and Lord of D and the Ring of Magnetism really shut it down, so it's a perfect counter. And then when you add the Shield agent, the combo was with Avengers, and so there's just a really strong way to just turn all that off, and I like it, and I think it's it's cheap enough that you can attain it, and really there's just so much utility there. You force character abilities, global abilities, whatever, to target an untargetable character, and it really just locks a ton of stuff down. Distraction, Mystic Box, all those things. So I think there's probably a lot of utility, and hopefully it'll serve you well if you face another team that has or relies on some targeting.
Yeah, I think that's what I was looking at. So I'd be interested to see how it lines up against that type of setup.
Now, Isaac, I know JT was just saying, and you've built this for a matchup. So you have been using Vassal as a good test site. How do you feel using it online? What's your experience with Vassal?
So absolutely love this new update. I mean, this board looks great. The dice count was really nice to have that up there, and it's great to see these War Light cards in here. Honestly, like when I started playing and trying to prepare for Worlds events, I kind of hooked up with Patrick and played over Hangouts just with cards and actual dice, and this is so much quicker, so much easier to. I think we knocked out like 6 games in an hour last night, mostly because I was getting ran over quickly, but it's so much quicker to be like, oh, let me switch out 4 cards. So if you want to test, if you want to brew, I mean, this is the opportunity to do it. And most nights there's plenty of people on here. I'm a night owl with Vassal. I'm sure there's people on during the day. I would have no idea though.
Well, again, I want to thank both of our contestants here, Shadow and Isaac, the winner Isaac, for definitely putting on a good show for us. Again, if you want to see more of this, you can check out the Reserve Pool website, reservepool.com, and also link up to and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get updates on any of these videos, see new episodes of In the Field and In the Lab. Thanks again to my counterpart here, JT Homesh, Canadian National Champion, and we look forward to seeing you in the field again.
Next time.
Yeah, I'll change that at the end. That was